Alrighty. Sorry about the delay. Welcome back to Mecha Mondays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fraggeth, and wow, we got people. Oh, I am sorry to hear that, Lauren Steele. Hope you feel better soon. Jeez, having to cancel your vacation for it sucks, but I definitely get it. Oh, good. Fever has passed at least. That's excellent. Well, yeah, definitely get better. I can't say that this installment will be especially relaxing. It'll start off with a bit more minutia. A lot of this chapter has been minutia of chapter 13, where it's like, oh, here's the organizational schema of this particular um, rump battalion strike force uh, under Blackie Blackstone. And then we actually get to some actual action, which is nice. It's pretty good from what I recall. I, I don't know if it's quite as good as the initial opening action sequence, which is just utterly relentless. It does not quit. But yeah, this won't be super long. But if people are hanging around and want to talk about their thoughts on Starship Troopers, I'm more than happy to hang around for a bit and do that. Um, I think I think just about everyone who reads the book probably has an opinion. Um, and I think that's kind of part of why the book works fundamentally is whether you agree with his proposed future scenario or not, it is at least thought provoking, is it not? And that's kind of what I think ultimately what counts quite a lot, doesn't it? For art, it should, whether you like it or not, it should at least provoke some thought. Maybe poke you a little. Maybe be like, hey, maybe the way you think isn't the best way to think, or maybe it is, but here's another viewpoint. This is why we read. So previously on, other than the minutia of our boy, he has gone through OCS, Officer Command School, I think. Um, Definitely Officer School. Uh, so he is now a prospective officer. He is right now out with like a temporary sort of temporary rank that makes him an officer. Um, in theory, that does give him command of other people, and he's been given as well he should, a long stern talking to about the responsibilities of commanding men. In this case, all men. I think that's one of like he's so one thing I've got to give Heinlein about his vision of Starship Troopers is as far as race or cultural background, none of that matters. Um, that's very open in this. Is it's like our main character, our protagonist, he's Juan Rico. He's not the Great White Hope or anything. He's Juan Rico. He's just this guy, and he's surrounded by people of many varying different cultural backgrounds. So in many ways, it's thinking ahead. But there really aren't any women in the mobile infantry. There are doing ships, so I guess partly due to the time era in which it was written, which again was what 59 or 60, 59, yeah. Um, you know, I don't think people were at least not of an Americanized background. We're not really talking about having women in the armed forces as much more than a supporting auxiliary role. And now, of course, we know they can fight just as hard as anyone, obviously, because they're human beings. That's one of the things we're extremely good at, is dialing up aggression when we need or want it. Um, Oh, at least it happened before you were about to leave, and not while you were actually already out. That's true. That's true. Um, anyway, um, but at least they serve as ships pilots or captains of ships, which is vitally important for the mobile infantry to be mobile. They can't go cruising around the cosmos without it. Um, so credit where it's due. He does at least have a forward-thinking view on at least, or did at the time, or could be perceived as having a forward-thinking view of bringing everyone together. Female soldiers causes favoritism and discord. Um, that has been the line. I am not always sure how true that is, and frankly, I think it's something that you doesn't necessarily have to be true. It may be very true, but I think that's something that, with a little more open-mindedness and beating into you of certain psychology, I think we could get around if we really wanted to. Anyway, I will get cracking momentarily once I find what part of the page I left off on. So what I had to do last time was because I had to cut a bit into chapter 13, but then leave partway through. Um, and part of that is because chapter 13 is a behemoth. If it was just chapter 13, it'd be fine. But I had like a chapter to go before that, and that chapter was unfortunately very short. So now we're reading the back portion of chapter 13 and then chapter 14, which is like 1.5 pages. Let's be generous and call it two. Um, so this is going to be fairly short. Um, yeah, speaking of the Kurds, remember how we completely shafted them a couple of years back? That was great. That felt awesome. That was horrifying to watch. That was just spectacular. That is trust we will never get back. Anyway, oh, that could be perceived as political. Oh no. Oh well. That was a bad decision. Period. Anyway. Yeah, here we go. Oh, that's why I couldn't find it. It's the bottom of the page. Okay. So yeah, this will be fairly short. If anyone wants to talk about it, we can have a chat, I guess. It'll be kind of one-sided. I'll try and read out people's comments as they come. Um, Hopefully we won't get into any arguments. It is a hot button series. Um, and all I ask is that people try to be nice. Try to be nice. I'm going to try not to be overly dismissive myself. Um, and yeah, we'll get rolling. For the next 2 weeks, I was never so busy. Not even in boot camp. Oh, that's right. So the last thing that happened right beforehand is because Johnnie had experience working on the suits, the powered armor, um, and they're having to go and re-rig a bunch of them before they get into position. He's basically volunteered, hey, um, I can help. I can help make this happen faster with the engineering crew. And they're like, yes, okay, let's go. So for the next 2 weeks, I was never so busy, not even in boot camp. Working as an ordnance and armor mech about 10 hours a day was not all that I did. Math, of course, and no way to duck it with the skipper tutoring me. Meals, say an hour and a half a day, plus the mechanics of staying alive, shaving, showering, putting buttons in uniforms, and trying to chase down the Navy Master-at-Arms, get him to unlock the laundry to locate clean uniforms 10 minutes before inspection. It is an unwritten law of the Navy that facilities must always be locked when they are most needed. Guard mount, parade, inspections, a minimum of platoon routine took another hour a day. But besides, I was George. Every outfit has a George. He's the most junior officer and has the extra jobs. Athletics officer, mail censor, referee for competitions, school officer, correspondence courses officer, prosecutor courts martial, treasurer of the Welfare Mutual Loan Fund, custodian of the registered publications, stores officer, troopers mess officer, etc. ad endless nauseum. Rusty Graham had been George until he happily turned it over to me. He wasn't so happy when I insisted on a site inventory on everything for which I had to sign. He suggested that if I didn't have sense enough to accept a commissioned officer's signed inventory, then perhaps a direct order would change my tune. So I got sullen and told him to put his orders in writing, with a certified copy so that I could keep the original and endorse the copy over to the team commander. Rusty angrily backed down. Even a second lieutenant isn't stupid enough to put such orders in writing. I wasn't happy either, as Rusty was my roommate and was then still my tutor in math, but we held the site inventory. I got chewed out by Lieutenant Warren for being stupidly officious, but he opened his safe and let me check his registered publications. Captain Blackstone opened his with no comment, and I couldn't tell whether he approved of my site inventory or not. Publications were okay, but accountable property was not. Poor Rusty. He had accepted his predecessor's count, and now the count was short. And the other officer was not merely gone, he was dead. Rusty spent a restless night, and so did I, then went to Blackie and told him the truth. Blackie chewed him out and then went over the missing items, found ways to expend most of them as lost in combat. It reduced Rusty's shortages It reduced Rusty's shortages to a few days' pay, but Blackie had him keep the job, thereby postponing the cash reckoning indefinitely. Not all George jobs caused that much headache. There were no courts martial. Good combat teams don't have them. There was no mail to censor, as the ship was in Cherenkov Drive. Same for welfare loans for similar reasons. Athletics I delegated to Brumby. Referee was if and when. The troopers' mess was excellent. I initialed menus and sometimes inspected the galley, i.e. I scrounged a sandwich without getting out of dungarees when working late in the armory. Correspondence courses meant a lot of paperwork, since quite a few were continuing their educations, war or no war. But I delegated my platoon sergeant, and the records were kept by the PFC, who was his clerk. Nevertheless, George jobs soaked up about 2 hours every day. There were so many. You see where this left me. 10 hours O&A, 3 hours math, meals an hour and a half, personal 1 hour, military fiddlework 1 hour, George 2 hours, sleep 8 hours. Total 26 and a half hours. The ship wasn't even on the 25-hour sanctuary day. Once we left, we went on Greenwich Standard and the Universal Calendar. The only slack was in my sleeping time. I was sitting in the card room about 1 o'clock one morning, plugging away at math, when Captain Blackstone came in. I said, "Good evening, Captain."
"Morning, you mean? What the deuce ails you, son? Insomnia?"
Not exactly. He picked up a stack of sheets, remarking,
"Can't your sergeant handle your paperwork? Oh, I see. Go to bed."
"But, Captain—"
"Sit back down. Johnnie, I've been meaning to talk to you. I never see you here in the card room evenings. I walk past your room, you're at your desk. When your bunkie goes to bed, you move out here. What's the trouble?"
"Well, I just never seem to get caught up."
"Nobody ever does. How's the work going in the armory?"
"Pretty well. I think we'll make it."
"I think so, too. Look, son, you've got to keep a sense of proportion. You have two prime duties. First is to see that your platoon's equipment is ready. You're doing that. You don't have to worry about the platoon itself, I told you that. The second, and just as important, you've got to be ready to fight. You're muffing that.
I'll be ready, Captain.
Nonsense and other comments. You're getting no exercise and losing sleep. Is that how to train for a drop? When you lead a platoon, son, you've got to be on the bounce. From here on, you will exercise from 1630 to 1800 each day. You will be in your sack with lights out at 2300. And if you lie awake 15 minutes 2 nights in a row, you will report to the surgeon for treatment. Orders.
Yes, sir. I felt the bulkheads closing in on me and added desperately, Captain, I don't see how I can get to bed by 23 and still get everything done.
Then you won't. As I said, son, you must have a sense of proportion. Tell me how you spend your time.
So I did. He nodded.
Just as I thought.
He picked up my math homework, tossed it in front of me.
Take this. Sure, you want to work on it, but why work so hard before we go into action?
Well, I thought...
Think is what you didn't do. There are 4 possibilities, and only one calls for finishing these assignments. First, you might buy a farm. Second, you might buy a small piece and be retired with an honorary commission. Third, you might come through all right, but get a down check on your Form 31 from your examiner, namely me, which is just what you're aching for at the present time. Why, son, I won't even let you drop if you show up with eyes red from no sleep, and I won't even let you drop if you show up with eyes red from no sleep and muscles flabby from too much chair parade. The fourth possibility is that you take a grip on yourself, in which case I might let you take a swing at leading a platoon. So let's assume that you do, and put on the finest show since Achilles slew Hector, and I pass you. In that case only, you'll need to finish these math assignments, so do them on the trip back. That takes care of that. I'll tell the skipper. The rest of those jobs you are relieved of right now. On our way home, you can spend your time on math, if we get home. But you'll never get anywhere if you don't learn to keep first things first. Go to bed.
A week later, we made rendezvous, coming out of drive and coasting short of the speed of light while the fleet exchanged signals. We were sent briefing, battle plan, our mission and orders, a stack of words as long as a novel, and were told not to drop. Oh, we were to be in the operation, but we would ride down like gentlemen, cushioned in retrieval boats. This we could do because the Federation already held the surface. 2nd, 3rd, and 5th MI divisions had taken it, and paid cash. The described real estate didn't seem worth the price. Planet P is smaller than Terra, with a surface gravity of 0.7, is mostly Arctic cold ocean and rock, with lichenous flora and no fauna of interest. Its air is not breathable for long, being contaminated with nitrous oxide and too much ozone. Its one continent is about half the size of Australia, plus many worthless islands. It would probably require as much terraforming as Venus before we could use it. However, we were not buying real estate to live on. We went there because bugs were there, and they were there on our account, so Staff thought. Staff told us that Planet P was an uncompleted advance base, probability 87 plus or minus 6%, to be used against us. Since the planet was no prize, the routine way to get rid of this bug base would be for the Navy to stand off at a safe distance and render this ugly spheroid uninhabitable by man or bug. But the CNC had other ideas. The operation was a raid. It sounds incredible to call a battle involving hundreds of ships and thousands of casualties a raid, especially as, in the meantime, the Navy and a lot of other Cap troopers were keeping things stirred up many light years into bug space in order to divert them from reinforcing Planet P. But the CNC was not wasting men. This giant raid could determine who won the war, whether next year or 30 years hence. We needed to learn more about bug psychology. Must we wipe out every bug in the galaxy? Or was it possible to trounce them and impose a peace? We did not know. We understood them as little as we understood termites. To learn their psychology, we had to communicate with them, learn their motivations, find out why they fought and under what conditions they would stop. For these, the Psychological Warfare Corps needed prisoners. Workers are easy to capture, but a bug worker is hardly more than animate machinery. Warriors can be captured by burning off enough limbs to make them helpless, but they are almost as stupid without a director as workers. From such prisoners, our own professor types had learned important matters. The development of that oily gas that killed them, but not us. Oh, the development of that oily gas that killed them, but not us, came from analyzing the biochemistries of workers and warriors, and we had had other new weapons from such research even in the short time I had been a cap trooper. But to discover why bugs fight, we needed to study members of their brain cast. Also, we hoped to exchange prisoners. So far, we had never taken a brain bug alive. We had either cleaned out colonies from the surface, as on Sheol, or, as had too often been the case, raiders had gone down their holes and not come back. A lot of brave men had been lost this way. Still more had been lost through retrieval failure. Sometimes a team on the ground had its ship or ships knocked out of the sky. What happens to such a team? Possibly it dies to the last man. More probably it fights until power and ammo are gone. Then survivors are captured as easily as so many beetles on their backs. From our co-belligerents, the Skinnies, we knew that many missing troopers were alive as prisoners. Thousands, we hoped, hundreds, we were sure. Intelligence believed that prisoners were always taken to Klendathu. The bugs are as curious about us as we are about them. A race of individuals able to build cities, starships, armies, maybe even more mysterious to a hive entity than a hive entity is to us. As may be, we wanted those prisoners back. In the grim logic of the universe, this may be a weakness. Perhaps some race that never bothers to rescue an individual may exploit this human trait to wipe us out. The Skinnies have such a trait only slightly, and the bugs don't seem to have it at all. Nobody ever saw a bug come to the aid of another because he was wounded. They cooperate perfectly in fighting, but units are abandoned the instant they are no longer useful. Our behavior is different. How often have you seen a headline like this? 2 die attempting rescue of drowning child. If a man gets lost in the mountains, hundreds will search and often 2 or 3 searchers are killed. But the next time somebody gets lost, just as many volunteers turn out. Poor arithmetic, but very human. It runs through all our folklore, all human religions, all our literature. A racial conviction that when one human needs rescue, others should not count the price. Weakness? It might be the unique strength that wins us a galaxy. Weakness or strength, bugs don't have it. There was no prospect of trading fighters for fighters. But in a hive polyarchy, some castes are valuable. Or so our psych warfare people hoped. If we could capture brain bugs, alive and undamaged, we might be able to trade on good terms. And suppose we captured a queen? What is a queen's trading value? A regiment of troopers? Nobody knew, but Battle Plan ordered us to capture bug royalty, brains and queens, at any cost, on the gamble that we could trade them for human beings. The third purpose of Operation Royalty was to develop methods. How to go down, how to dig them out, how to win with less than total weapons. Trooper for warrior, we could now defeat them above ground. Ship for ship, our navy was better. But, so far, we had had no luck when we tried to go down their holes. If we failed to exchange prisoners on any terms, then we still had to A. Win the war, B. Do so in a way that gave us a fighting chance to rescue our own people, or C. Might as well admit it, die trying and lose. Planet P was a field test to determine whether we could learn how to root them out. Briefing was read to every trooper, and he heard it again in his sleep during hypno preparation. So, while we all knew that Operation Royalty was laying the groundwork toward eventual rescue of our mates, we also knew that Planet P held no human prisoners. It had never been raided. So there was no reason to buck for medals in a wild hope of being personally in on a rescue. It was just another bug hunt, but conducted with massive force and new techniques. We were going to peel that planet like an onion until we knew that every bug had been dug out. The Navy had plastered the islands and that unoccupied part of the continent until they were radioactive glaze. We could tackle bugs with no worries about our rear. The Navy also maintained a ball of yarn patrol in tight orbits around the planet, guarding us, escorting transports, keeping a spy watch on the surface to make sure that bugs did not break out behind us despite that plastering. Under the battle plan, the orders for Blackie's Blackguards charged us with supporting the prime mission when ordered or as opportunity presented, relieving another company in a captured area, protecting units of other cores in that area, maintaining contact with MI units around us, and smacking down any bugs that showed their ugly heads. So we rode down in comfort to an unopposed landing. I took my platoon out at a powered armored trot. Blackie went ahead to meet the company commander he was relieving, get the situation and size up the terrain. He headed for the horizon like a scared jackrabbit. I had Kuna send his first section scouts out to locate the forward corners of my patrol area, and I sent my platoon sergeant off to my left to make contact with a patrol from the 5th Regiment. We, the 3rd Regiment, had a grid 300 miles wide and 80 miles deep to hold. My piece was a rectangle 40 miles deep and 17 miles wide in the extreme left flank forward corner. The Wolverines were behind us, Lieutenant Koroshen's platoon on the right and Rusty beyond him. Our 1st Regiment had already relieved a 5th Division regiment ahead of us, with a brick wall overlap which placed them on my corner as well as ahead. Ahead and rear, right flank and left, referred to orientations set up in dead reckoning tracers in each command suit to match the grid of the battle plan. We had no true front, simply an area, and the only fighting at the moment was going on several hundred miles away, to our arbitrary right and rear. Somewhere off that way, probably 200 miles, should be 2nd Platoon, G Company, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Regiment, commonly known as the Roughnecks. Or the Roughnecks might be 40 light years away. Tactical organization never matches the table of organization. All I knew from plan was that something called the 2nd Battalion was on our right flank beyond the boys from the Normandy beach. But that battalion could have been borrowed from another division. The Sky Marshal plays his chess without consulting the pieces. Anyhow, I should not be thinking about the Roughnecks. I had all I could do as a Blackguard. My platoon was okay for the moment, safe as you can be on a hostile planet, but I had plenty to do before Kuna's first squad reached the far corner. I needed to 1. Locate the platoon leader who had been holding my area. 2. Establish corners and identify them to section and squad leaders. 3. Make contact liaison with 8 platoon leaders on my sides and corners, 5 of whom should already be in position, those from 5th and 1st Regiments, and 3, Koroshen of the Blackguards and Bayonne and Sukarno of the Wolverines, who were now moving into position. 4. Get my own boys spread out to their initial points as fast as possible by shortest routes. The last had to be set up first, as the open column in which we disembarked would not do it. Brumby's last squad needed to deploy to the left flank. Kuna's leading squad needed to spread from dead ahead to left oblique. The other 4 squads must fan out in between. This is a standard square bleh. Lips getting confused. This is a standard square deployment, and we had simulated how to reach it quickly in the drop room. I called out, Kuna, Brumby, time to spread 'em out, using the non-com circuit.
Roger, 1 sec. Roger, sec 2. Roger, sec 2.
Section leaders take charge, and caution each recruit. You'll be passing a lot of cherubs. I don't want 'em shot at by mistake. I bit down from my private circuit and said, Sarge, you got contact on the left? I forget who Sarge is. Oh no.
Yes, sir. They see me, they see you.
Good. I don't see a beacon on our anchor corner. Missing. So you coach Kuna by DR. Same for lead scout. That's Hughes. And have Hughes set a new beacon. I wondered why the 3rd or 5th hadn't replaced that anchor beacon, my forward left corner where 3 regiments came together. No use talking. I went on. DR, check. You bear 275, miles 12. Sir, reverse is 96, miles 12 scant. Close enough. I haven't found my opposite number yet, so I'm cutting out forward at max. Mind the shop. Got him, Mr. Rico. I advanced at max speed while clicking over to officer's circuit. Square Black 1, answer. Black 1, Chang's Cherubs. Do you read me? Answer. I wanted to talk with the leader of the platoon we were relieving, and not for any perfunctory I relieve you, sir. I wanted the ungarnished word. I didn't like what I had seen. Either the top brass had been optimistic in believing that we had mounted overwhelming force against a small, not fully developed bug base, or the Blackguards had been awarded the spot where the roof fell in. In the few moments I had been out of the boat, I had spotted half a dozen armored suits on the ground. Empty, I hoped, dead men possibly, but way too many, any way you looked at it. Besides that, my tactical radar display showed a full platoon, my own, moving into position, but only a scattering moving back toward retrieval or still on station. Nor could I see any system to their movements. I was responsible for 680 square miles of hostile terrain, and I wanted very badly to find out all I could before my own squads were deep into it. Battle Plan had ordered a new tactical doctrine which I found dismaying. Do not close the bug's tunnels. Blackie had explained this as if it had been his own happy thought, but I doubt if he liked it. The strategy was simple and, I guess, logical, if we could afford the losses. Let the bugs come up. Meet them and kill them on the surface. Let them keep on coming up. Don't bomb their holes, don't gas their holes. Let them out. After a while, a day, 2 weeks, a day, 2 days, a week, if we really did have overwhelming force, they would stop coming up. Planning staff estimated, don't ask me how, that the bugs would expend 70% to 90% of their warriors before they stopped trying to drive us off the surface. Then we would start the unpeeling, killing surviving warriors as we went down and trying to capture royalty alive. We knew what the brain cast looked like. We had seen them dead, in photographs, and we knew they could not run. Barely functional legs, bloated bodies that were mostly nervous system. Queens no human had ever seen, but a bio-war corps had prepared sketches of what they should look like. Obscene monsters larger than a horse and utterly immobile. Besides brains and queens, there might be other royalty castes. As might be, encourage the warriors to come out and die, then capture alive anything but warriors and workers. A necessary plan, and very pretty, on paper. What it meant to me was that I had an area 17 by 40 miles which might be riddled with unstopped bug holes. I wanted coordinates on each one. If there were too many, well, I might accidentally plug a few and let my boys concentrate on watching the rest. A private in a marauder suit can cover a lot of terrain, but he can look at only one thing at a time. He is not superhuman. I bounced several miles ahead of the first squad, still calling the Cherub platoon leader, varying it by calling any Cherub officer and describing the pattern of my transponder beacon. Da-de-da-da. No answer. At last I got a reply from my boss.
Johnny, knock off the noise. Answer me on conference circuit.
So I did, and Blackie told me crisply to quit trying to find the cherub leader for Square Black 1. There wasn't one. Oh, there might be a non-com alive somewhere, but the chain of command had broken. By the book, somebody always moves up. But it does happen if too many links are knocked out. As Colonel Nielsen had once warned me in the dim past, almost a month ago. Captain Chang had gone into... excuse me. Captain Chang had gone into action with 3 officers besides himself. There was one left now, my classmate, Abe Moyes, and Blackie was trying to find out from him the situation. Abe wasn't much help. When I joined the conference and identified myself, Abe thought I was his battalion commander and made a report almost heartbreakingly precise, especially as it made no sense at all. Blackie interrupted and told me to carry on.
Forget about a relief briefing. The situation is whatever you see. That it is.
Oh, sorry, there's a line break.
The situation is whatever you see that it is. So stir around and see.
Right, boss. I slashed across my own area toward the far corner, the anchor corner, as fast as I could move, switching circuits on my first bounce. Sarge, how about that beacon?
No place to put on that corner to put it.
Oh, sorry.
No place on that corner to put it, sir. A fresh crater there about scale 6.
I whistled to myself. You could drop the Tours into a size 6 crater. One of the dodges the bugs used on us when we were sparring, ourselves on the surface, bugs underground, was landmines. They never seemed to use missiles, except from ships in space. If you were near the spot, the ground shock got you. If you were in the air when one went off, the concussion wave could tumble your gyros and throw your suit out of control. I had never seen larger than a scale 4 crater. The theory was that they didn't dare use too big an explosion because of damage to their troglodyte habitats, even if they cofferdammed around it. Place an offset beacon, I told him. Tell section and squad leaders.
I have, sir. Angle 101.
No, sorry.
Angle 110, miles 1.3. Dotty dit.
Da-dee-dit. That's code.
You should be able to read it, bearing about 3-5 from where you are.
He sounded as calm as a sergeant instructor at drill, and I wondered if I were letting my voice get shrill. I found it in my display, above my left eyebrows. Long and 2 shorts. Okay, I see Kuna's first squad is nearly in position. Break off that squad, have it patrol the crater. Equalize the areas. Brumby will have to take 4 more miles of depth. I thought with annoyance that each man already had to patrol 14 square miles. Spreading the butter so thin meant 17 square miles per man, and a bug can come out of a hole less than 5 feet wide. I added, how hot is that crater?
Amber red at the edge. I haven't been in it, sir.
Stay out of it. I'll check it later. Amber red would kill an unprotected human, but a trooper in armor can take it for quite a time. If there was that much radiation at the edge, the bottom would no doubt fry your eyeballs. Tell Naidi to pull Milan and Bjork back to Amber Zone, and have them set up ground listeners. 2 of my 5 recruits were in that first squad, and recruits are like puppies. They stick their noses into things. Tell Naidi that I am interested in 2 things, movement inside the crater, and noises in the ground around it. We wouldn't send troopers out through a hole so radioactive that mere exit would kill them. But bugs would, if they could reach us that way. Have Naidi report to me. To you and me, I mean.
Yes, sir.
My platoon sergeant added,
May I make a suggestion?
Of course, and don't stop to ask permission next time.
Navarre can handle the rest of the first section. Sergeant Kuna could take the squad at the center and leave Naidi free to supervise the ground listening watch.
I knew what he was thinking. Naidi, so newly a corporal that he had never before had a squad on the ground, was hardly the man to cover what looked like the worst danger point in Square Black 1. He wanted to pull Naidi back for the same reasons that I had pulled the recruits back. I wondered if he knew what I was thinking. That nutcracker. If he was using the suit he had worn as Blackie's battalion staffer, he had one more circuit than I had, a private one to Captain Blackstone. Blackie was probably patched in and listening via that extra circuit. Obviously, my platoon sergeant did not agree with my disposition of the platoon. If I didn't take his advice, the next thing I heard might be Blackie's voice cutting in.
Sergeant, take charge. No. Sergeant, take charge. Mr. Rico, you're relieved.
But, confound it, a corporal who wasn't allowed to boss his squad wasn't a corporal, and a platoon leader who was just a ventriloquist's dummy for his platoon sergeant was an empty suit. I didn't mull this. It flashed through my head, and I answered at once. I can't spare a corporal to babysit with 2 recruits, nor a sergeant to boss 4 privates and a lance.
But
hold it. I want the crater watch relieved every hour. I want our first patrol sweep made rapidly. Squad leaders will check any hole reported and get beacon bearings so that section leaders, platoon sergeant, and platoon leader can check them as they reach them. If there aren't too many, we'll put a watch on each. I'll decide later.
Yes, sir.
Second time around, I want a slow patrol, as tight as possible, to catch holes we miss on the first sweep. Assistant squad leaders will use snoopers on that pass. Squad leaders will get bearings on any troopers, or suits, on the ground. The cherubs may have left some live wounded. But no one is to stop even to check physicals until I order it. We've got to know the bug situation first.
Yes, sir.
Suggestions?
Just one, he answered. I think the squad chasers should use their snoopers on that first fast pass.
Very well, do it that way. His suggestion made sense, as the surface air temperature was much lower than the bugs use in their tunnels. A camouflaged vent hole should show a plume like a geyser by infrared vision. I glanced at my display. Kuna's boys are almost at limit. Start your parade.
Very well, sir.
Off. I clicked over to the wide circuit and continued to make tracks for the crater while I listened to everybody at once as my platoon sergeant revised the pre-plan, cutting out one squad, heading it for the crater, starting the rest of the first section in a 2-squad countermarch while keeping the second section in a rotational sweep as pre-planned, but with 4 miles increased depth. Got the sections moving, dropped them and caught the first squad as it converged on the anchor crater, gave it its instructions, cut back to the section leaders in plenty of time to give them new beacon bearings at which to make their turns. That is a long paragraph that is basically one sentence. So, occasionally we do this. I did it with CJ Sherry, and this is another case of using just about every single bit of the grammatical buffalo. So we're going to read this with all the punctuation included. I don't do this all the time, but occasionally one catches my fancy, and I like to do it as a giggle. Quote, off, period, unquote. I clicked over to the wide circuit and continued to make tracks for the crater while I listened to everybody at once as my platoon sergeant revised the pre-plan. Long hyphen, cutting out one squad, comma, heading it for the crater, comma, starting the rest of the first section in a 2-squad countermarch while keeping the second section in a rotational sweep as pre-planned. Oh my gosh, I think I skipped. No, I didn't. Second section in a rotational sweep as pre-planned, but with 4 miles increased depth, semicolon. Got the sections moving, comma, dropped them and caught the first squad as it converged on the anchor crater, comma, gave it its instructions, semicolon. Cut back to the section leaders in plenty of time to give them new beacon bearings at which to make their turns, period. So, there's a lot going on there. He did it with the smart precision of a drum major on parade, and he did it faster and in fewer words than I could have done it. Extended order-powered suit drill, with a platoon spread over many miles of countryside, is much more difficult than the strutting precision of parade. But it has to be exact, or you'll blow the head off your mate in action. Or, as in this case, you sweep part of the terrain twice and miss another part. But the drill master has only a radar display of his formation. He can see with his eyes only those near him. While I listened, I watched it in my own display. glowworms crawling past my face in precise lines. Crawling because even at 40 miles an hour is because even 40 miles an hour is a slow crawl when you compress a formation 20 miles across into a display that a man can see. I listened to everybody at once because I wanted to hear the chatter inside the squads. There wasn't any. Kuna and Brumby gave their secondary commands and shut up. The corporals sang out only as squad changes were necessary. Section and squad chasers called out occasional corrections of interval or alignment, and privates said nothing at all. I heard the breathing of 50 men like muted sibilants of surf, broken only by necessary orders in the fewest possible words. Blackie had been right. The platoon had been handed over to me, tuned like a violin. They didn't need me. I could go home and my platoon would get along just as well. Maybe better. I wasn't sure I had been right in refusing to cut Kuna out to guard the crater. If trouble broke there and those boys couldn't be reached in time, the excuse that I had done it by the book was worthless. If you get killed, or let somebody else get killed, by the book, it's just as permanent as any other way. I wondered if the Roughnecks had a spot open for a buck sergeant. Most of Square Black 1 was as flat as the prairie around Camp Curry, and much more barren. For this I was thankful. It gave us our only chance of spotting a bug coming up from below and getting him first. We were spread so widely that 4-mile intervals between men, and about 6 minutes between waves of a fast sweep, was as tight a patrol as we could manage. This isn't tight enough. Any one spot would remain free of observation for at least 3 or 4 minutes between patrol waves, and a lot of bugs can come out of a very small hole in 3 to 4 minutes. Radar can see farther than the eye, of course, but it cannot see as accurately. In addition, we did not dare use anything but short-range selective weapons. Our own mates were spread around us in all directions. If a bug popped up and you let fly with something lethal, it was certain that not too far beyond that bug was a cap trooper. This sharply limits the range and force of the frightfulness you dare use. Because they all have, like, pocket nukes. Um, so, when they say lethal, they mean big booms. On this operation, only officers and platoon sergeants were armed with rockets, and even so, we did not expect to use them. If a rocket fails to find its target, it has a nasty habit of continuing to search until it finds one, and it cannot tell a friend from foe. A brain that can be stuffed into a small rocket is fairly stupid. As we know, that need not be true now, but he, I guess, couldn't have known that then. The author, I mean. I would happily have swapped that area patrol, with thousands of MI around us, for a simple one-platoon strike in which you know where your own people are and anything else is an enemy target. I didn't waste any time moaning. I never stopped bouncing toward that anchor corner crater while watching the ground and trying to watch the radar picture as well. I didn't find any bug holes, but I did jump over a dry wash, almost a canyon, which could conceal quite a few. I didn't stop to see. I simply gave its coordinates to my platoon sergeant and told him to have somebody check it. That crater was even bigger than I had visualized. The tours would have been lost in it. I shifted my radiation counter to directional cascade, took readings on floor and sides, red to multiple red right off the scale. Very unhealthy for long exposure, even to a man in armor. I estimated its width and depth by helmet rangefinder, then prowled around and tried to spot openings leading underground. I did not find any, but I did run into crater watches set out by adjacent platoons of the 5th and 1st Regiments, so I arranged to split up the watch by sectors, such that the combined watch could yell for help from all 3 platoons. The patch-in to do this being made through 1st Lieutenant Do Campo of the Headhunters on our left. Then I pulled out Naides' lance and half his squad, including the recruits, and sent them back to platoon, reporting all this to my boss and to my platoon sergeant. Captain, I told Blackie, we aren't getting any ground vibrations. I'm going down inside and checking for holes. The readings show that I won't get too much dosage if I...
Youngster, stay out of that crater.
But, Captain, I just meant to...
Shut up. You can't learn anything useful. Stay out.
Yes, sir. The next 9 hours were tedious. We had been preconditioned for 40 hours of duty, 2 revolutions of Planet P, through forced sleep, elevated blood sugar count, and hypno-indoctrination. And, of course, the suits are self-contained for personal needs. The suits can't last that long, but each man was carrying extra power units and super HP air cartridges for recharging. I assume that's high pressure. But a patrol with no action is dull. It is easy to goof off. I did what I could think of, having Kuna and Brumby take turns as drill sergeant, thus leaving platoon sergeant and leader free to rove around. I gave orders that no sweeps were to repeat in pattern so that each man would always check terrain that was new to him. There are endless patterns to cover a given area by combining the combinations. Besides that, I consulted my platoon sergeant and announced bonus points toward Honor Squad for first verified hole, first bug destroyed, etc. Boot camp tricks, but staying alert means staying alive, so anything to avoid boredom. Finally, we had a visit from a special unit, 3 combat engineers in a utility air car, escorting a talent, a spatial sensor. Blackie warned me to expect them.
Protect them and give them what they want.
Yes, sir. What will they need?
How should I know? If Major Landry wants you to take off your skin and dance in your bones, do it.
Yes, sir. Major Landry. I relayed the word and set up a bodyguard by sub-areas. Then I met them as they arrived because I was curious. I had never seen a special talent at work. They landed beside my right flank and got out. Major Landry and 2 officers were wearing armor and hand flamers, but the talent had no armor and no weapons, just an oxygen mask. He was dressed in a fatigue uniform without insignia, and he seemed terribly bored by everything. I was not introduced to him. He looked like a 16-year-old boy, until I got close and saw a network of wrinkles around his weary eyes. As he got out, he took off his breathing mask. I was horrified, so I spoke to Major Landry, helmet to helmet without radio. Major, the air around here is hot. Besides that, we've been warned that... Pipe down, said the Major. He knows it. I shut up. The talent strolled a short distance, turned and pulled his lower lip. His eyes were closed, and he seemed lost in thought. He opened them and said fretfully, "How can one be expected to work with all those silly people jumping around?" Major Landry said crisply, "Ground your platoon." I gulped and started to argue, then cut in the all-hands circuit. "First platoon Blackguards, ground and freeze!" It speaks well for Lieutenant Silva that all I heard was a double echo of my order, as it was repeated down to squad. I said, "Major, can I let them move around on the ground?" "No, and shut up." Presently, the censor got back in the car, put his mask on. There wasn't room for me, but I was allowed, ordered really, to grab on and be towed. We shifted a couple of miles. Again, the censor took off his mask and walked around. This time he spoke to one of the other combat engineers, who kept nodding and sketching on a pad. The Special Mission Unit landed about a dozen times in my area, each time going through the same apparently pointless routine. Then they moved on into the 5th Regiment's grid. Just before they left, the officer who had been sketching pulled a sheet out of the bottom of his sketch box and handed it to me. "Here's your sub-map. The wide red band is the only bug boulevard in your area. It is nearly 1,000 feet down where it enters, but it climbs steadily towards your left rear and leaves at about minus 450. The light blue network joining it is a big bug colony, the only places where it comes within 100 feet of the surface I have marked. I think that's missing punctuation there. The light blue network joining it is a big bug colony. Sorry. The light blue network joining it is a big bug colony, the only places where it comes within 100 feet of the surface I have marked. You might put some listeners in there until we can get over there and handle it. I stared at it. Is this map reliable? The engineer officer glanced at the sensor, then said very quietly to me, "Of course it is, you idiot. What are you trying to do, upset him?" They left while I was studying it. The artist engineer had done double sketching, and the box had combined them into a stereo picture of the first 1,000 feet under the surface. I was so bemused by it that I had to be reminded to take the platoon out of freeze. Then I withdrew the ground listeners from the crater, pulled 2 men from each squad, and gave them bearings from that infernal map to have them listen along the bug highway and over the town. I reported it to Blackie. He cut me off as I started to describe the bug tunnels by coordinates.
Major Landry relayed a facsimile to me. Just give me coordinates of your listening posts.
I did so. He said,
Not bad, Johnny, but not quite what I want either. You've placed more listeners than you need over their mapped tunnels. String 4 of them along that bug racetrack, place 4 more in a diamond around their town. That leaves you 4. Place one in the That leaves you 4. Place 1 in the triangle formed by your own right rear corner and the main tunnel. The other 3 go in the larger area or the other side of the tunnel.
Yes, sir. I added, Captain, can we depend on this map?
What's troubling you?
Well, it seems like magic. Black magic.
Oh, look, son, I've got a special message from the Sky Marshal to you. He says to tell you that map is official, and that he will worry about everything else so that you can give full time to your platoon. Follow me?
Yes, Captain.
But the bugs can burrow mighty fast, so you give special attention to the listening posts outside the area of the tunnels. Any noise from those 4 outside posts louder than a butterfly's roar is to be reported at once, regardless of its nature.
Yes, sir.
When they burrow, it makes a noise like frying bacon, in case you've never heard it. Stop your patrol sweeps. Leave 1 man on visual observation of the crater. Let half of your platoon sleep for 2 hours while the other half pairs off to take turns listening.
Yes, sir.
You may see some more combat engineers. Here's the revised plan. A sapper company will blast down and cork that main tunnel where it comes nearest the surface, either at your left flank or beyond in headhunter territory. At the same time, another engineer company will do the same where that tunnel branches about 30 miles off to your right in the 1st Regiment's bailiwick. When the corks are in, a long chunk of their main street and a biggish settlement will be cut off. Meanwhile, the same sort of thing will be going on a couple of other places. Thereafter, we'll see. Either the bugs break through to the surface and we have a pitched battle, or they sit tight and we go down after them, sector at a time.
I see. I wasn't sure that I did, but I understood my part. Rearrange my listening posts, let half my platoon sleep. Then, a bug hunt. On the surface if we were lucky, underground if we had to.
Have your flank make contact with that sapper company when it arrives. Help them if they want help.
Right, Captain. I agreed heartily. Combat engineers are almost as good an outfit as the infantry. It's a pleasure to work with them. In a pinch they fight, maybe not expertly, but bravely. Or they go ahead with their work, not even lifting their heads, while a battle rages around them. They have an unofficial, very cynical, and very ancient motto. First we dig 'em, then we die in 'em, to supplement their official motto, Can Do. Both mottos are literal truth. As a little aside, I'm about 75 to 85% sure that Heinlein was actually in a engineering battalion at one point. I may be misremembering and confusing him with E. Doc Smith in this instance, though. I know he was in the military. I don't remember. Now I'm doubting everything. I'm pretty sure he was a sapper, or if not a sapper, he was in engineering. In the engineers, sorry, but I may be misremembering. I'll double check it after I'm done. Uh, Here we go.
Get on it, son.
12 listening posts meant that I could put a half squad at each post, either a corporal or his lance, plus 3 privates, then allow 2 of each group of 4 to sleep, while the other 2 took turns listening. Navarre and the other section chaser could watch the crater and sleep, turn about, while section sergeants could take turns in charge of the platoon. The redisposition took no more than 10 minutes once I had detailed the plan and given out bearings to the sergeants. Nobody had to move very far. I warned everybody to keep eyes open for a company of engineers. As soon as each section reported its listening posts in operation, I clicked to the wide circuit. Odd numbers. Lie down. Prepare to sleep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sleep. A suit is not a bed, but it'll do. One good thing about hypno preparation for combat is that, in the unlikely event of a chance to rest, a man can be put to sleep instantly by post-hypnotic command triggered by someone who is not a hypnotist, and awakened just as instantly, alert and ready to fight. It is a lifesaver because a man can get so exhausted in battle that he shoots at things that aren't there and can't see what he should be fighting. But I had no intention of sleeping. I had not been told to, and I had not asked. The very thought of sleeping when I knew that perhaps many thousands of bugs were only a few hundred feet away made my stomach jump. Maybe that sensor was infallible. Perhaps the bugs could not reach us without alerting our listening posts. Maybe, but I didn't want to chance it. I clicked to my private circuit. Sarge,
Yes, sir?
you might as well get a nap. I'll be on watch. Lie down and prepare to sleep. 1, 2.
Excuse me, sir. I have a suggestion.
Yes?
If I understand the revised plan, no action is expected for the next 4 hours. You could take a nap now and then.
Forget it, Sarge. I am not going to sleep. I am not going to sleep. I am going to make the rounds of the listening posts and watch for that sapper company.
Very well, sir.
I'll check number 3 while I'm here. You stay here with Brumby and catch some rest while I...
Johnnie!
I broke off. Yes, Captain? Had the old man been listening?
Are your posts all set?
Yes, Captain, and my odd numbers are sleeping. I am about to inspect each post. Then...
Let your sergeants do it. I want you to rest.
But, Captain...
Lie down. That's a direct order. Prepare to sleep. 1, 2, 3. Johnnie!
Captain, with your permission, I would like to inspect my posts first. Then I'll rest, if you say so, but I would rather remain awake. Blackie guffawed in my ear.
Look, son, you've slept for an hour and 10 minutes.
Sir?
Check the time.
I did so, and felt foolish.
You wide awake, son?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Things have speeded up. Call your odd numbers and put your even numbers to sleep. With luck, they may get an hour. So swap them around, inspect your posts, and call me back.
I did so, and started my rounds without a word to my platoon sergeant. I was annoyed at both him and Blackie, at my company commander because I resented being put to sleep against my wishes, and as for my platoon sergeant, I had a dirty hunch that it wouldn't have been done if he weren't the real boss and myself just a figurehead. But after I had checked posts number 3 and 1, no sounds of any sort, both were forward of the bug area, I cooled down. After all, blaming a sergeant, even a fleet sergeant, for something a captain did was silly. Sarge.
Yes, Mr. Rico?
Do you want to catch a nap with the even numbers? I'll wake you a minute or two before I wake them. He hesitated slightly.
Sir, I'd like to inspect the listening post myself.
Haven't you already?
No, sir. I've been asleep the past hour.
Huh?
He sounded embarrassed. The captain required me to do so. He placed Brumby temporarily in charge and put me to sleep immediately after he relieved you.
I started to answer, then laughed helplessly. Sarge, let's you and I go off somewhere and go back to sleep. We're wasting our time. Captain Blackie is running this platoon.
I have found, sir, he answered stiffly, that Captain Blackstone invariably has a reason for anything he does.
I nodded thoughtfully, forgetting that I was 10 miles from my listener. Yes, you're right. He always has a season. That has to be a typo. Maybe he does always have a season. I wonder if it's autumn. It does honestly in this printing have an S, not an R. You're right, he always has a season. Since he had us both sleep, he must want us both awake and alert now.
I think that must be true.
Any idea why? He was rather long in answering.
Mr. Rico, he said slowly, if the captain knew, he wouldn't tell us. I've never known him to hold back information. But sometimes he does things a certain way without being able to explain why. The captain's hunches, well, I've learned to respect them.
So, squad leaders are all even numbers. They're asleep.
Yes, sir.
Alert the lance of each squad. We won't wake anybody, but when we do, seconds may be important.
Right away.
I checked the remaining forward post, then covered the 4 posts bracketing the bug village, jacking my phones in parallel with each listener. I had to force myself to listen, because you could hear them down there now, chittering to each other. I wanted to run, and it was all I could do not to let it show. I wondered if that special talent was simply a man with incredibly acute hearing. Well, no matter how he did it, the bugs were where he said they were. Back at OCS, we had received demonstrations of recorded bug noises. These 4 posts were picking up typical nest noises of a large bug town. That chittering which may be their speech. Though why should they need to talk if they are all remotely controlled by the braincast? A rustling like sticks and dry leaves, a high background whine which is always heard at a settlement and which had to be machinery. Their air conditioning, perhaps. I did not hear the hissing, cracking noise they make in cutting through rock. The sounds along the Bug Boulevard were unlike the settlement sounds, a low background rumble which increased to a roar every few moments, as if heavy traffic were passing. I listened at post number 5, then got an idea. I checked it by having the standby man at each of the 4 posts along the tunnel call out, "Mark!" to me each time the roaring got loudest. Presently I reported, "Captain."
Yeah, Johnny?
The traffic along this bug race is all moving one way, from me toward you. Speed is approximately 110 miles per hour. A load goes past about once a minute.
Close enough, he agreed. I make it 108 with a headway of 58 seconds.
Oh. I felt dashed and changed the subject. I haven't seen that sapper company.
You won't. They picked a spot in the middle rear of Headhunter area. Sorry, I should have told you. Anything more?
No, sir. We clicked off and I felt better. Even Blackie could forget. And there hadn't been anything wrong with my idea. I left the tunnel zone to inspect the listening post to right and rear of the bug area, post 12. As with the others, there were 2 men asleep, one listening, one standby. I said to the standby, "Getting anything?" "No, sir." The man listening, one of my 5 recruits, looked up and said, "Mr. Rico, I think this pickup has just gone sour." "I'll check it," I said. He moved to let me jack in with him. Frying bacon so loud you could smell it. I hit the all-hands circuit. "First platoon up! Wake up! Call off and report!" and clicked over to officer's circuit. Captain! Captain Blackstone! Urgent!
Slow down, Johnny. Report.
Frying bacon sounds, sir, I answered, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. Post 12 at coordinates Easter 9, square black 1.
Easter 9, he agreed. Decibels?
I looked hastily at the meter on the pickup. I don't know, Captain. Off the scale at the max end. It sounds like they're right under my feet.
Good,
He applauded, and I wondered how he could feel that way.
best news we've had today. Now listen, son, get your lads awake.
They are, sir.
Very well. Pull back 2 listeners, have 'em spot check around post 12. Try to figure for where the bugs are going to break out. And stay away from that spot. Understand me?
I hear you, sir, I said carefully, but I do not understand. He sighed.
Johnny, you'll turn my hair gray yet. Look, son, we want them to come out. The more the better. You don't have the firepower to handle them other than by blowing up their tunnel as they reach the surface. And that is the one thing you must not do. If they come out in force, a regiment can't handle them. But that's just what the general wants, and he's got a brigade of heavy weapons in orbit waiting for it. So you spot that breakthrough, fall back, and keep it under observation. If you are lucky enough to have a major breakthrough in your area, your reconnaissance will be patched through all the way to the top. So stay lucky and stay alive. Got it?
Yes, sir. Spot the breakthrough, fall back and avoid contact. Observe and report.
Get on it.
I pulled back listeners 9 and 10 from the middle stretch of Bug Boulevard and had them close in on coordinates Easter 9 from right and left, stopping every half mile to listen for frying bacon. At the same time, I lifted post 12 and moved it toward our rear, while checking for a dying away of the sound. In the meantime, my platoon sergeant was regrouping the platoon around in the forward area between the bug settlement and the crater, all but 12 men who were ground listening. Since we were under orders not to attack, we both worried over the prospect of having the platoon spread too widely for mutual support. So he rearranged them in a compact line 5 miles long, with Brumby's section on the left, nearer the bug settlement. This placed the men less than 300 yards apart, almost shoulder to shoulder for cap troopers, and put 9 of the men still on listening stations within support distance of one flank or the other. Only the 3 listeners working with me were out of reach of ready help. I told Bayonne of the Wolverines and Do Campo of the Headhunters that I was no longer patrolling and why, and I reported our regrouping to Captain Blackstone. He grunted.
Suit yourself. Got a prediction on that breakthrough?
It seems to center about Easter 10, Captain, but it is hard to pin down. The sounds are very loud in an area about 3 miles across, and it seems to get wider. I'm trying to circle it at an intensity level just barely on scale. I added, could they be driving a new horizontal tunnel just under the surface? He seemed surprised.
That's possible. I hope not. We want 'em to come up. He added, let me know if the center of the noise moves. Check on it.
Yes, sir. Captain.
Huh? Speak up.
You told us not to attack when they break out. If they break out. What are we to do? Are we just spectators? There was a longish delay, 15 or 20 seconds, and he may have consulted upstairs. At last he said,
Mr. Rico, you are not to attack at or near Easter 10. Anywhere else, the idea is to hunt bugs.
Yes, sir, I agreed happily. We hunt bugs.
Johnny, he said sharply, if you go hunting metals instead of bugs, and I find out, you're going to have a mighty sad-looking Form 31.
Captain, I said earnestly, I don't ever want to win a medal. The idea is to hunt bugs.
Right. Now quit bothering me.
1 sec. There are no mid-chapter breaks here. I called my platoon sergeant, explained the new limits under which we would work, told him to pass the word along and to make sure that each man's suit was freshly charged, air and power. Oh, 1 sec.
We've just finished that, sir. I suggest that we relieve the men with you.
He named 3 reliefs. That was reasonable, as my ground listeners had had no time to recharge. But the reliefs he named were all scouts. Silently, I cussed myself for utter stupidity. A scout suit is as fast as a command suit, twice the speed of a marauder. I had been having a nagging feeling of something left undone, and I had checked it off to the nervousness I always feel around bugs. Now I knew why. Here I was, 10 miles away from my platoon with a party of 3 men, each in a marauder suit. When the bugs broke through, I was going to be faced with an impossible decision, unless the men with me could rejoin as fast as I could. That's good, I agreed, but I no longer need 3 men. Send Hughes right away. Have him relieve Nyberg. Use the other 3 scouts to relieve the listening posts farthest forward.
Just Hughes?
He said doubtfully. Hughes is enough. I'm going to man 1 listener myself. 2 of us can straddle the area. We know where they are now. I added, get Hughes down here on the bounce. For the next 37 minutes, nothing happened. Hughes and I swung back and forth along the forward and rear arcs of the area around Easter 10, listening 5 seconds at a time, then moving on. It was no longer necessary to seat the microphone in rock. It was enough to touch it to the ground to get the sound of frying bacon strong and clear. The noise area expanded, but its center did not change. Once I called Captain Blackstone to tell him the sound had abruptly stopped, and again 3 minutes later to tell him that it had returned. Otherwise, I used the scout circuit and let my platoon sergeant take care of the platoon and the listening posts near the platoon. At the end of this time, everything happened at once. And away we go. A voice called out on the scout circuit, "Bacon fry, Albert 2!" I clicked over and called out, "Captain, bacon fry at Albert 2, Black 1." Clicked over to liaison with the platoons surrounding me. "Liaison flash, bacon frying at Albert 2, square Black 1." And immediately heard Do Campo reporting, "Frying bacon sounds at Adorf 3, green 12. I relayed to Blackie and cut back to my own scout circuit. Heard, "Bugs! Bugs! Help!" "Where?" No answer. I clicked over. "Sarge, who reported bugs?" He rapped back,
"Coming up out of their town, about Bangkok 6.
"Hit 'em!" I clicked over to Blackie. "Bugs at Bangkok 6, Black 1. I am attacking."
I heard you order it," he answered calmly. "How about Easter 10?
Easter 10 is... The ground fell away under me, and I was engulfed in bugs. I didn't know what had happened to me. I wasn't hurt. It was a bit like falling into the branches of a tree. But those branches were alive, and kept jostling me while my gyros complained and tried to keep me upright. I fell 10 to 15 feet, deep enough to be out of the daylight. Then a surge of living monsters carried me back up into the light. And training paid off. I landed on my feet, talking and fighting. "Breakthrough at Easter 10. No, Easter 11, where I am now. Big hole and they're pouring up. Hundreds. More than that." I had a hand flamer in each hand and was burning them down as I reported.
"Get out of there, Johnnie."
"Wilco." And I started to jump. And stopped. Checked the jump in time, stopped flaming, and really looked. For I suddenly realized that I ought to be dead. "Correction," I said, looking and hardly believing. "Breakthrough at Easter 11 is a feint. No warriors."
"Repeat."
"Easter 11, Black 1. Breakthrough here is entirely by workers so far. No warriors. I am surrounded by bugs and they are still pouring out, but not a one of them is armed. And those nearest near me have all have typical worker features. I have not been attacked." I added, Captain, do you think this could just be a diversion? Diversion? With their real breakthrough to come somewhere else?
Could be, he admitted. Your report is patched through right to division, so let them do the thinking. Stir around and check what you've reported. Don't assume that they are all workers. You may find out the hard way.
Right, Captain. I jumped high and wide, intending to get outside that mass of harmless but loathsome monsters. That rocky plain was covered with black, crawly shapes in all directions. I overrode my jet controls and increased the jump, calling out, Hughes, report!
Bugs, Mr. Rico! Zillions of them! I'm a burning them down!
Hughes, take a close look at those bugs. Any of them fighting back? Aren't they all workers? I hit the ground and bounced again. He went on,
Hey, you're right, sir. How'd you know?
Rejoin your squad, Hughes. I clicked over. Captain, several thousand bugs have exited near here from an undetermined number of holes. I have not been attacked. Repeat, I have not been attacked at all. If there are any warriors among them, they must be holding their fire and using workers as camouflage. He did not answer. There was an extremely brilliant flash far off to my left, followed at once by one just like it, but farther away to my right front. Automatically, I noted time and bearings. Captain Blackstone, answer! At the top of my jump, I tried to pick out his beacon, but that horizon was cluttered by low hills in square black 2. I clicked over and called out, Sarge, can you relay to the captain for me? At that very instant, my platoon sergeant's beacon blinked out. I headed on that bearing as fast as I could push my suit. I had not been watching my display closely. My platoon sergeant had the platoon, and I had been busy, first with ground listening and, most lately, with a few hundred bugs. I had suppressed all but the non-com's beacons to allow me to see better. I studied the skeleton display, picked out Brumby and Kuna, their squad leaders and section chasers. Kuna, where's the platoon sergeant?
He's reconnoitering a hole, sir.
Tell him I'm on my way, rejoining. I shifted circuits without warning. First platoon Blackguards to second platoon. Answer.
What do you want?
Lieutenant Koroshen growled. I can't raise the captain.
You won't. He's out.
Dead?
No, but he's lost power, so he's out.
Oh, then your company commander?
All right. So what? Do you want help?
No, sir.
Then shut up, Koroshen told me. Until you do need help. We've got more than we can handle here.
Okay. Suddenly, I suddenly found that I had more than I could handle. While reporting to Koroshen, I shifted to full display and short range, as I was almost closed with my platoon. And now I saw my first section disappear, one by one, Brumby's beacon disappearing first. Kuna, what's happening to the first section? His voice sounded strained.
They are following the platoon sergeant down.
If there's anything in the book that covers this, I don't know what it is. Had Brumby acted without orders? Or had he been given orders I hadn't heard? Look, the man was already down a bug hole, out of sight and hearing. Is this a time to go legal? We would sort such things out tomorrow. If any of us had a tomorrow. Very well, I said. I'm back now. Report. My last jump brought me among them. I saw a bug off to my right, and I got him before I hit. No worker, this. It had been firing as it moved.
I've lost 3 men, Kuna answered, gasping. I don't know what Brumby lost. They broke out in 3 places at once. That's when we took the casualties. But we're mopping them.
A tremendous shockwave slammed me just as I bounced again, slapped me sideways. 3 minutes 37 seconds. Call it 30 miles. Was that our sappers putting down their corks? First section, brace yourselves for another shockwave. I landed sloppily, almost on top of a group of 3 or 4 bugs. They weren't dead, but they weren't fighting. They just twitched. I donated them a grenade and bounced again. "Hit 'em now!" I called out. "They're groggy, and mind that next—" The second blast hit as I was saying it. It wasn't as violent. "Kuna, call off your section, and everybody stay on the bounce and mop up." The call-off was ragged and slow. Too many missing files as I could see from my physicals display. But the mop-up was precise and fast. I ranged around the edge and got half a dozen bugs myself. The last of them suddenly became active just before I flamed it. Why did the concussion daze them more than it did us? Because they were unarmored? Or was it their brain bug somewhere down below that was dazed? The call-off showed 19 effectives, plus 2 dead, 2 hurt, and 3 out of action through suit failure. And two of these latter, Navarre was repairing by vandalizing power units from suits of dead and wounded. The third suit failure was in radio and radar and could not be repaired, so Navarre assigned the man to guard the wounded, the nearest thing to pick up we could manage until we were relieved. In the meantime, I was inspecting, with Sergeant Kuna, the 3 places where the bugs had broken through from the nest below. Comparison with the sub-map showed, as one could have guessed, that they had cut exits at the places where their tunnels were closest to the surface. One hole had closed. It was a heap of loose rock. The second one did not show bug activity. I told Kuna to post a lance and a private there with orders to kill single bugs, close the hole with a bomb if they started to pour out. It's all very well for the Sky Marshal to sit up there and decide that holes must not be closed, but I had a situation, not a theory. Then I looked at the third hole, the one that had swallowed up my platoon sergeant and half my platoon. Here a bug corridor came within 20 feet of the surface, and they had simply removed the roof for about 50 feet. Where the rock went, what caused that frying bacon noise while they did it, I could not say. The rocky roof was gone, and the sides of the hole were sloped and grooved. The map showed what must have happened. The other 2 holes came up from small side tunnels. This tunnel was part of their main labyrinth. So the other 2 had been diversions, and their main attack had come from here. Can those bugs see through solid rock? Nothing was in sight down that hole either. Nothing was in sight down that hole, neither bug nor human. Kuna pointed out the direction the second section had gone. It had been 7 minutes and 40 seconds since the platoon sergeant had gone down, slightly over 7 since Brumby had gone after him. I peered into the darkness, gulped and swallowed my stomach. "Sergeant, take charge of your section," I said, trying to make it sound cheerful. "If you need help, call Lieutenant Koroshen." "Orders, sir?" "None, unless some come down from above. I'm going down to find the second section, so I may be out of touch for a while." Then I jumped down in the hole at once, because my nerve was slipping. Behind me I heard, "Section! First squad, second squad, third squad. By squads, follow me!" And Kuna jumped down too. It's not nearly so lonely that way. I had Kuna leave 2 men at the hole to cover our rear, one on the floor of the tunnel, one at surface level. Then I led them down the tunnel the second section had followed, moving as fast as possible, which wasn't fast as the roof of the tunnel. What? Which wasn't fast as the which wasn't oh, that's why. Okay, sorry. Brain to mouth interface failure. Then I led them down the tunnel the second section had followed, moving as fast as possible, which wasn't fast, as the roof of the tunnel was right over our heads. A man can move in sort of a skating motion in a powered suit without lifting his feet, but it is neither easy nor natural. We could have trotted without armor faster. Snoopers were needed at once, whereupon we confirmed something that had been theorized. Bugs see by infrared. That dark tunnel was well lighted when seen by snoopers. So far it had no special features, simply glazed rock walls arching over a smooth, level floor. We came to a tunnel crossing the one we were in, and I stopped short of it. There were doctrines for how you should dispose a strike force underground, but what good are they? But what good are they? The only certainty was that the man who had written the doctrines had never himself tried them. Because, before Operation Royalty, nobody had come back up to tell what had worked and what had not. One doctrine called for guarding every intersection such as this one. But I had already used 2 men to guard our escape hole. If I left 10% of my force at each intersection, mighty soon I would be 10%ed to death. I decided to keep us together, and decided, too, that none of us would be captured. Not by bugs. Far better a nice, clean real estate deal. And with that decision, a load was lifted from my mind, and I was no longer worried. I peered cautiously into the intersection, looked both ways. No bugs. So I called out over the non-com circuit, "Brumby!" The result was startling. You hardly hear your own voice when using suit radio, as you are shielded from your output. But here, underground in a network of smooth corridors, my output came back to me as if the whole complex were one enormous waveguide. Brumby! My ears rang with it. And then rang again. Mr. Rico! Not so loud. Not so loud, I said, trying to talk very softly myself. Where are you? Brumby answered, not quite so deafeningly. Sir, I don't know. We're lost. Well, take it easy. We're coming to get you. You can't be far away. Is the platoon sergeant with you? No, sir. We never... Hold it. I clicked in my private circuit. Sarge. Sorry. Who's he talking to? Oh, is he talking to Kuno? Oh, sorry. It's okay. Okay, sorry. I got very confused. No worries. Hold it. I clicked in my private circuit. Sarge. I read you, sir. His voice sounded calm, and he was holding the volume down. Brumby and I are in radio contact, but we have not been able to make rendezvous. Where are you? He hesitated slightly. Sir, my advice is to make rendezvous with Brumby's section, then return to the surface. Answer my question. Mr. Rico, you could spend a week down here and not find me, and I am not able to move. You must... Cut it, Sarge. Are you wounded? No, sir, but... Then why can't you move? Bug trouble? Lots of it. They can't reach me now, but I can't come out. So I think you would better... Sarge, you're wasting time. I am certain you know exactly what turns you took. Now tell me while I look at the map. And give me a vernier reading on your DR tracer. That's a direct order. Report. He did so, precisely and concisely. I switched on my headlamp, flipped up the snoopers, and followed it on the map. All right, I said presently. You're almost directly under us and 2 levels down, and I know what turns to take. We'll be there as soon as we pick up the second section. Hang on. I clicked over. Brumby. Here, sir. When you came to the first tunnel intersection, did you go right, left, or straight ahead? Straight ahead, sir. Okay. Kuna, bring 'em along. Brumby, have you got bug trouble? Not now, sir. Well, that's how we got lost. We tangled with a bunch of them, and when it was over, we were turned around. I started to ask about casualties, then decided that bad news could wait. I wanted to get my platoon together and get out of there. A bug town with no bugs in sight was somehow more upsetting than the bugs we had expected to encounter. Brumby coached us through the next 2 choices, and I tossed tanglefoot bombs down each corridor we did not use.
Tanglefoot is a derivative of the nerve gas we had been using on bugs in the past. Instead of killing, it gives any bug that trots through it a sort of shaking palsy. We had been equipped with it for this one operation, and I would have swapped a ton of it for a few pounds of the real stuff. Still, it might protect our flanks. In one long stretch of tunnel, I lost touch with Brumby, some oddity in the reflection of radio waves, I guess, for I picked him up at the next intersection. But there he could not tell me which way to turn. This was the place, or near the place, where the bugs had hit them. And here the bugs hit us. I don't know where they came from. One instant everything was quiet. Then I heard the cry of "Bugs! Bugs!" from back of me in the column. I turned, and suddenly bugs were everywhere. I suspect that those smooth walls are not as solid as they look. That's the only way I can account for the way they were suddenly all around us and among us. We couldn't use flamers, we couldn't use bombs. We were too likely to hit each other. But the bugs didn't have any such compunctions among themselves if they could get one of us. But the bugs didn't have any such compunctions among themselves if they could get one of us. But we had hands and we had feet. It couldn't have lasted more than a minute. Then there were no more bugs, just broken pieces of them on the floor. And 4 Cap troopers down. One was Sergeant Brumby, dead. During the ruckus, the second section had rejoined. They had not been far away, sticking together to keep from getting further lost in that maze, and had heard the fight. Hearing it, they had been able to trace it by sound, where they had not been able to locate us by radio. Kuna and I made certain that our casualties were actually dead, then consolidated the 2 sections into one of 4 squads, and down we went, and found the bugs that had our platoon sergeant besieged. That fight didn't last any time at all, because he had warned me what to expect. He had captured a brain bug and was using its bloated body as a shield. He could not get out, but they could not attack him without, quite literally, committing suicide by hitting their own brain. We were under no such handicap. We hit them from behind. Then I was looking at the horrid thing he was holding, and I was feeling exultant despite our losses, when suddenly I heard close up that frying bacon noise. A big piece of roof fell on me, and Operation Royalty was over as far as I was concerned. I woke up in bed and thought that I was back at OCS and had just had a particularly long and complicated bug nightmare. But I was not at OCS. I was in a temporary sick bay of the transport Argonne, and I really had had a platoon of my own for nearly 12 hours. But now I was just one more patient, suffering from nitrous oxide poisoning and overexposure to radiation, through being out of armor for over an hour before being retrieved, plus broken ribs and a knock in the head which had put me out of action. It was a long time before I got everything straight about Operation Royalty, and some of it I'll never know. Why Brumby took his section underground, for example. Brumby is dead, and Naidi bought the farm next to his, and I'm simply glad that they both got their chevrons and were wearing them that day on Planet P when nothing went according to plan. I did learn, eventually, why my platoon sergeant decided to go down into that bug town. He had heard my report to Captain Blackstone that the major breakthrough was actually a feint made with workers set up to be slaughtered. When real warrior bugs broke out where he was, he had concluded, correctly and minutes sooner than staff reached the same conclusion, that the bugs were making a desperation push, or they would not expend their workers simply to draw our fire. He saw that their counterattack made from Bugtown was not insufficient force, and concluded that the enemy did not have many reserves, and decided that, at this one golden moment, one man acting alone might have a chance of raiding, finding royalty, and capturing it. Remember, that was the whole purpose of the operation. We had plenty of force simply to sterilize Planet P, but our object was to capture royalty casts and to learn how to go down in. So he tried it, snatched that one moment, and succeeded on both counts. It made it mission accomplished for the first platoon of the Blackguards. Not very many platoons, out of many, many hundreds, could say that. No queens were captured, the bugs killed them first, and only 6 brains. None of the 6 were ever exchanged, they didn't live long enough. But the Psych Warfare boys did get live specimens, so I suppose Operation Royalty was a success. My platoon sergeant got a field commission. I was not offered one, and would not have accepted, but I was not surprised when I learned that he had been commissioned. Captain Blackie had told me that I was getting the best sergeant in the fleet, and I had never had any doubt that Blackie's opinion was correct. I had met my platoon sergeant before. Oh, I've been doing his voice wrong the entire time. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. I knew I was going to get this wrong. I'm so mad. Ah! I'm not going to reread the whole chapter to get it right. Sorry. But I was not surprised when I learned that he had been commissioned. Captain Blackie had told me that I was getting the best sergeant in the fleet, and I had never had any doubt that Blackie's opinion was correct. I had met my platoon sergeant before. I don't think any other Blackguard knew of this. Not from me, and certainly not from him. I doubt if Blackie himself knew it. But I had known my platoon sergeant since my first day as a boot. His name was Zim. Is Zim. This is what happens when you get too lost in the sauce. You forget important details. I could have gotten it right and it would have been rad. Oh well. My part in Operation Royalty did not seem a success to me. I was in the Argonne more than a month, first as a patient, then as an unattached casual, before they got around to delivering me and a few dozen others to Sanctuary. It gave me too much time to think, mostly about casualties, and what a generally messed up job I had made out of my one short time on the ground as platoon leader. I knew I hadn't kept everything juggled the way the lieutenant used to. Why, I hadn't even managed to get wounded still swinging. I'd let a chunk of rock fall on me. And casualties, I didn't know how many there were. I just knew that when I closed ranks, there were only 4 squads when I had started with 6. I didn't know how many more there might have been before Zim got them to the surface, before the Blackguards were relieved and retrieved. I didn't even know whether Captain Blackstone was still alive. He was. In fact, he was back in command about the time I went underground. And I had no idea what the procedure was if a candidate was alive and his examiner was dead. But I felt that my Form 31 was sure to make me a buck sergeant again. It really didn't seem important that my math books were in another ship. Nevertheless, when I was let out of bed the first week I was in the Argonne, after loafing and brooding a day, I borrowed some books from one of the junior officers and got to work. Math is hard work, and it occupies your mind. And it doesn't hurt to learn all you can of it, no matter what rank you are. Everything of any importance is founded on mathematics. When I finally checked in at OCS and turned in my pips, I learned that I was a cadet again instead of a sergeant. I guess Blackie gave me the benefit of the doubt. My roommate, Angel, was in our room with his feet on the desk. And in front of his feet was a package, my math books. He looked up and looked surprised.
Hey, Juan, we thought you had bought it.
Me? The bugs don't like me that well. When do you go out?
Why, I've been out, Angel protested. Left the day after you did, made 3 drops and been back a week. What took you so long?
Took the long way home. Spent a month as a passenger.
Some people are lucky. What drops did you make?
Didn't make any, I admitted. He stared.
Some people have all the luck.
Perhaps Angel was right. Eventually, I graduated. But he supplied some of the luck himself in patient tutoring. I guess my luck has usually been people. Angel and Jelly and the lieutenant and Carl and Lieutenant Colonel Dubois, yes, and my father, and Blackie, and Brumby, and Ace, and always Sergeant Zim. Brevet Captain Zim now, with the permanent rank of First Lieutenant. It wouldn't have been right for me to have wound up senior to him. Benny Montez, a classmate of mine, and I were going to Fleet Landing Field the day after graduation, waiting to go up to our ships. We were still such brand new second lieutenants that being saluted made us nervous, and I was covering it by reading the list of ships in orbit around Sanctuary, a list so long that it was clear that something big was stirring, even though they hadn't seen fit to mention it to me. I felt excited. I had my two dearest wishes in one package, posted to my old outfit, and while my father was still there too. And now this, whatever it was, meant that I was about to have the polish put on me by Makey Learney under Lieutenant Jalal, with some important drop coming up. I was so full of it all that I couldn't talk about it, so I studied the lists. Whew, what a lot of ships! They were posted by types, too many to locate otherwise. I started reading off the troop carriers, the only ones that matter to an MI. There was the Mannerheim. Any chance of seeing Carmen? Probably not, but I could send a dispatch and find out. Big ships, the new Valley Forge and the new Ypres, Marathon, El Alamein, Iwo, Gallipoli, Leyte, Marne, Tours, Gettysburg, Hastings, Alamo, Waterloo, all places where Mudfeet had made their names to shine. I mean, I don't know if I'd qualify the Alamo in that list. It's remember the Alamo. Remember that time a bunch of guys were like, hey, let's do something really dumb and get everybody killed. Sorry. And it didn't feel tactically relevant at the time either. Or strategically relevant, rather. Little ships, the ones named for foot sloggers, Horatius, Alvin York, Swamp Fox, the Raj herself, bless her heart, Colonel Bowie, Devereaux, Vercingetorix, Sandino, Aubrey Cousins, Kamehameha, Audie Murphy, Xenophon, Aguinaldo. I said, there ought to be one named Magsaysay. Benny said, what? Ramon Magsaysay, I explained. Great man, great soldier. Probably be chief of psychological warfare if he were alive today. Didn't you ever study any history? Well, admitted Benny, I heard that Simon Bolivar built the pyramids, licked the Armada, and made the first trip to the moon. You left out marrying Cleopatra. Oh, that. Yep. Well, I guess every country has its own version of history. I'm sure of it. I added something to myself, and Benny said, what did you say? Sorry, Bernardo. Just an old saying in my own language. I suppose you could translate it, more or less, as, home is where the heart is. But what language was it? Tagalog, my native language. Don't they talk standard English where you come from? Oh, certainly, for business and school and so forth. We just talk the old speech around home a little. Traditions, you know. Yeah, I know. My folks chatter in Espanol the same way. But where do you... The speaker started playing Meadowland. Benny broke into a grin. I got a date with a ship. Watch yourself, fella. See ya. Mind the bugs. I turned back and went on reading ships' names. Palmelator, Montgomery, Chaka, Geronimo. Then came the sweetest sound in the world. Shines the name of Roger Young. I grabbed my kit and hurried. Home is where the heart is. I was going home. Chapter 14. Am I my brother's keeper? Genesis 4:9. How think ye, if a man have 100 sheep, and one of them be gone astray, doth he not leave the 99, and goeth into the mountains, and seeketh that which is gone astray? Matthew 12:12. How much then is a man better than a sheep? Matthew 18:12. In the name of God, the beneficent, the merciful, whoso saveth the life of one, it shall be as if he had saved the life of all mankind. The Quran, Surah 5:32. Each year we gain a little. You have to keep a sense of proportion. Oh, Tagalog is, the Philippines, right? So he's a Filipino? That tracks. Pretty sure that's Tagalog. Yes, the Philippines. Very good. Okay. Not crazy. Thought my memory had abandoned me. I was like, wait a minute. Sorry. Each year we gain a little. You have to keep a sense of proportion. Time, sir. My J.O. under instruction, candidate or third lieutenant Bearpaw, stood just outside my door. He looked and sounded awfully young, and was about as harmless as one of his scalp-hunting ancestors. Right, Jimmy. I was already in armor. We walked aft to the drop room. I said, as we went, "One word, Jimmy. Stick with me and keep out of my way. Have fun and use up your ammo. If by any chance I buy it, you're the boss. But if you're smart, you'll let your platoon sergeant call the signals." "Yes, sir." As we came in, the platoon sergeant called them to attention and saluted. I returned it and said, "At ease," and started down the first section while Jimmy looked over the second. Then I inspected the second section too, checking everything on every man. My platoon sergeant is much more careful than I am, so I didn't find anything. I never do. But it makes the men feel better if their old man scrutinizes everything. Besides, it's my job. Then I stepped out in the middle. "Another bug hunt, boys. This one is a little different, as you know. Since they still hold prisoners of ours, we can't use a Nova bomb on Klendathu, so this time we go down, stand on it, hold it, take it away from them. The boat won't be down to retrieve us. Instead, it'll fetch more ammo and rations. If you're taken prisoner, keep your chin up and follow the rules, because you've got the whole outfit behind you. You've got the whole Federation behind you. We'll come and get you. That's what the boys from the Swamp Fox and the Montgomery have been depending on. Those who are still alive are waiting, knowing that we will show up. And here we are. Now we go get 'em. Don't forget that we'll have help all around us, lots of help above us. All we have to worry about is our one little piece, just the way we rehearsed it. One last thing. I had a letter from Captain Jalal just before we left. He says that his new legs work fine. But he also told me to tell you that he's got you in mind, and he expects your names to shine. And so do I. 5 minutes for the Padre. I felt myself beginning to shake. It was a relief when I could call them to attention again and add, "By sections, port and starboard, prepare for drop." I was all right then, while I inspected each man into his cocoon down one side, with Jimmy and the platoon sergeant taking the other. Then we buttoned Jimmy into the number 3 center line capsule. Once his face was covered up, the shakes really hit me. My platoon sergeant put his arm around my armored shoulders. "Just like a drill, son." "I know it, father." I stopped shaking at once. "It's the waiting, that's all."
"I know. 4 minutes. Shall we get buttoned up, sir?"
"Right away, father." I gave him a quick hug, let the Navy drop crew seal us in. The shakes didn't start up again. Shortly, I was able to report, "Bridge, Rico's Roughnecks, ready for drop."
31 seconds, Lieutenant. She added, "Good luck, boys. This time we take 'em."
"Right, Captain."
Check. Now, some music while you wait.
She switched it on. "To the everlasting glory of the infantry." And right at the end here, we have a historical note. Young Roger W., Private, 148th Infantry, 37th Infantry Division, the Ohio Buckeyes. Born Tiffin, Ohio, 28 April 1918. Died 31 July 1943 on the island New Georgia, Solomons, South Pacific, while single-handedly attacking and destroying an enemy machine gun pillbox. His platoon had been pinned down by intense fire from this pillbox. Private Young was wounded in the first burst. He crawled toward the pillbox, was wounded a second time but continued to advance, firing his rifle as he did so. He closed on the pillbox, attacked and destroyed it with hand grenades, but in so doing he was wounded a third time and killed. His bold and gallant action in the face of overwhelming odds enabled his teammates to escape without loss. He was awarded posthumously the Medal of Honor. And that was Starship Troopers by one Robert A. Heinlein. It's a goodie. Certainly it's a book I think everyone should read at some point. It's punchy. It does kind of get dragged down in minutia, but that sort of is also, I think, why it's appealing, is whether you agree with any of the ideas or not. It's like, this is something that's been thought through very clearly by the author in question. He put a lot of thought into it, and it feels internally consistent. I have some issues with the idea of the only people being allowed to vote and make policy being military individuals. I like the theory, which is the people voting will be people who have a dedicated passion and desire for cooperation and doing things for the greater good. But I don't know if that is truly borne out in human nature, regardless of whether you're a soldier or not. But they've also got other safeguards in place for their society that aren't necessarily explicitly mentioned, but are implied. So I think it's optimistic, but at the same time, at least, it's a nice idea. People who are responsible adults being the ones setting policy, I think, is a nice thought. Certainly it would be nice if we had some of that in one way or another. At any rate, that'll about do it. Oh, it's later than I thought. I might actually have to run. I wanted to have like a little Q&A session or something, but we'll find time to do it elsewhere. I guess people can leave comments in the comment section if they want. Not for the purposes of boosting signal-to-noise ratio for the algorithm. I think I've made myself fairly clear that I don't especially care about that. If people want to do it for me, that's fine, but I'm not going to tell you to like and subscribe. I realize that comes across as reverse psychology, but like, I don't wish to play the game in that regard. I don't. I just don't. I don't really have an interest anymore. I don't think I ever really did. I think getting noticed is cool and all, but it's whatever. Anyway, so yeah, Starship Troopers. I hope people enjoyed it. I think it is a fun romp. I think it's, opening yourself up to different ideas. I think and to this day, and I've read a fair amount of military sci-fi, to this day, that opening sequence is still probably the absolute best, most thrilling military sci-fi I've ever read, and I've read quite a bit by now. It's wild how good it is. It's just so well done, and you've got people who have made their entire careers doing military sci-fi, like John Ringo, and they don't even really come close. It's like I can rag on John Ringo for a lot of things. There's actually a couple books he's done that I do rather enjoy that I think are quite fun. They're chock full of really obscure, like, subculture, pop culture references. It's kind of hard to explain. Like one that I'd probably consider doing is what is it called? It's totally riffing on Bolo, but it's part of one of his larger series. It's goofy. But it's got a reference to an ancient but still running webcomic called Sluggy Freelance, and it's just crazy to me. Like I remember reading the book, I'm like, Bun Bun, isn't that the? Oh my God, it is! It's the one from Sluggy Freelance. It's a little rabbit with a switchblade. It makes sense, sort of. Ancient internet history now. Um, I don't think Sluggy Freelance is relevant in the anybody's. Nobody, I don't think, is paying attention to it now beyond the devotees. I certainly haven't read it in Jesus, probably a decade now. So who knows? Uh, but yeah, I mean, I've read a bunch of military sci-fi over the years. I'd actually say there's a couple sequences in between Yukikaze and Good Luck Yukikaze that are really well done. From like if you've ever played like Ace Combat, it's like, oh my God. The difficulty with those is the delivery and the writing style in Yukikaze and Good Luck Yukikaze are extremely dry. And initially, I thought this was an artifact of the translation being kind of stiff, and it turns out no, it's like that in Japanese, so it comes across very well, but it's very off-putting the first time you read through it because you're like, wow, they're doing a lot of navel gazing, but they're being very matter of fact about it. Um, because it's essentially they're basically philosophical tomes, thinking about what's the philosophy of if you're up against something you cannot possibly hope to win against, you can't really hope to understand, let alone win against, paired with um, setting parameters for success versus failure, paired with um, burgeoning consciousness in myriad forms. It's pretty cool. In terms of like raw creepiness factor, it gets up there like really on like really disconcerting implications. It gets up there with Blind Sight. Certainly by the time Good Luck Yukikaze rolls around, there's some really dark shit that goes on in that. Um, Makes your hair stand on end. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I do want to get around to reading those at some point on stream. I've talked about that forever. Anyway, so yeah, Starship Troopers. It's kind of foundational to military science fiction. Um, Certainly, modern military science fiction has taken basically all the notes from it. Um, it's not the first piece of military sci-fi, but it's a pretty important one. And as I've mentioned before, it absolutely codifies uh, the use of powered armor as a military weapon of war. You as well as helping to codify some of the minutia of how would a spacefaring combination space navy and ground force actually work, as well as trying to come up with justifications for why don't you have the navy just nuke everything and remove the war problem entirely. We are going to see alternative solutions to that issue as we get into the Three Body Problem series. I will not spoil it, although I think a lot of people probably already know. And I'm not going to speak further on that. I'll let the books speak for themselves. Knowing what's coming, uh, going into them ahead of time, does provide a certain perspective. And I do have to kind of keep that under control. A lot of things make more and less sense retroactively. They're not retcons per se, but there's some things that get revealed in the third volume that are kind of like, you really could have fit this in at a better point, and it would have seemed a lot less convenient. It would have been like, oh, okay, this is a more or less natural outgrowth, whereas there it feels shoehorned in. It'll make sense when we get there. Um, anyway, so next Monday we will probably be starting Armor by John Stakely, which is you could call it a spiritual sequel of sorts to Starship Troopers, but it's not using the same spirit. So it's a lot of like there's going to be stuff like that segment where he like falls into the ground and there's a bunch of bugs all around him. We're going to have something like that recounted, not quite verbatim. the names of characters have been changed to protect the inti, the in, inti, inti, the inti, the innocent and guilty, the ginnocent, guilticent, whatever. Anyway, so if you like your military science fiction to be a bit more plot heavy, then Armor is probably for you. There is an overarching narrative there, whereas in this, there's a narrative, but it's mostly just kind of slice of life, which I think fundamentally works, by the way. I think that's actually one of the things that makes Starship Troopers fundamentally functional as a volume, as something worth reading, is it is done not with a narrative in mind, but a slice of life in mind. Just what is this guy's life like? And another thing that I will give Heinlein, when Heinlein chooses to, he is very good at feeling like this is an organic character. This is somebody just speaking. This is like their inner voice feels believable, like a believable person. They're not overly analytical necessarily. They're just saying what they're thinking, or thinking what they're thinking, as the case may be. And they feel, it's very easy to get into the cadence of. Even though the writing style is very different than a lot of the stuff we get now. Um, so yeah, next week we'll start Armor. This week we will be doing the last story of Instantiation this Wednesday. And then this Friday we'll start Destination Void by Frank Herbert. That's going to be a ride. You are not ready for the ending. I was not ready for the ending the first time I read it. There's a bunch of stuff we're not going to be ready for. I am hoping I can get this done in the amount of time that I have to do it, which is, let's see, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will have 6 weeks. Okay. It's going to be tight. These are going to have to be long chunks, though, in order to make it happen. Let me find some initial chapter breaks so I can see what I can do here. Let's see, it's how many pages long? It is 276. How many do they think I'm going to be able to do? I'll let 280. That doesn't seem right. Really? Did I math that wrong? That's saying that I'll only have to do like 45 pages to get it done. We're going to do like 50 pages a pop, and if we have one at the end that's really short, it gives us wiggle room. Oh, that's right. The epilogue has long mathematical formulae that I'm going to have to read aloud. Oh no. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm going to have difficulty typing that out. Maybe I can find a text version and copy paste it. I'll try to do that. I had forgotten that there's some of that in here. There's like, I don't think there are diagrams, but there are descriptions of diagrams, and there are, I think, the odd. Yeah, there we go. Adrenochrome. If she filled out the OH to C5H11N, would that take it through the blood-brain barrier at a less than fatal dosage? Such things as that we have in abundance. There's some chemistry, there's some math. There's going to be people trying to figure stuff out and make the best of a situation that is bad and getting worse. Actually, it's going to feel pretty similar to Under Pressure. I would compare it favorably to that. I would also compare it probably to Blind Sight in a number of ways. There is some conceptual overlap here, believe it or not. You'll see what I mean when I get there. Partly because there truly is nothing original under the sun, and partly because there's some interesting conceptual overlap. As we get into the second and third books of the series, you're going to be like, hey, isn't this Solaris by Stanislaw Lem? And it is, but it isn't. It really isn't. Oh, the change from 2x to slow-mo is quite jarring. I can only imagine. I don't think I could listen to myself at 2x speed. I can barely listen to myself normally. Anyway, glad people enjoyed. Feel free to discuss parts of the book in the comments. I'm not going to tell you not to. The only thing I'm going to say is try to be nice. I certainly have strong opinions. I'm trying not to let those out, but mostly because I just think the ideas are nice, but they're hopelessly optimistic. I also could go on a diatribe about the idea of enlightened self-interest being all but oxymoronic. Uh, it's no, I'm sorry, I'm not going there. Anyway, glad people dug. I'm amazed how many people tuned in. Probably there will be some people talking in the comments when the time comes because it's Starship Troopers. It's a fairly popular book. Oh, I've got other covers I can show off as well. Which ones didn't I get to? Which ones didn't I get to? I don't remember. Let me check. Nope, not that one. That's not what I want to do. This will take me a sec. Ah, here we go. Book covers. Yeah, here we go. Come on. Ah, I backed out. Whoops. There we go. All right, so here's one. Boop, boop. That's one. It's cute. It's very pulpy.
He looks so happy. He's so jaunty. He's about to go leaping forth.
Where's another one that I didn't use? Being a book that's been republished about 1.5 times, you'd kind of expect. If I ever get around to your point, Cookie, gotta say, of all the old-fashioned sci-fi books where the authors were 1900s white guys, I was expecting it to be much worse. At some point, I do want to get around to Lensman, and that has some issues, particularly with regards to women. Also with like there's some things that that the Lensman series takes for granted and you're just supposed to roll with, and from a modern perspective you're like, hold the phone, you can't just do that. That's like the implications are extremely concerning. Namely that you have super powered psychic super people who are judge, jury, and executioner, and everyone's just like, yeah, no, that's totally fine. Which isn't to say that the Bosconians are not bad. They're bad. They're bad news. They like eat souls and stuff. Spoilers. Sorta. I mean, I think that gets covered in Galactic Patrol, so I don't think it's that big a deal. Yeah, we get introduced to Warsaw. Anyway, and a number of other things. And it's like I adore the Lensman series. I think it is the absolute pinnacle of pulpy, pulpy, pulpy space opera from the beginning, the first half of the century, the 19th century, 20th century. It's great. I derive a great deal of comfort food type pleasure from it, but that is not to say that like E. Doc Smith has like what I would call really enlightened views, particularly with regards to the sexes. But this isn't to say that women can't do stuff in the universe, but there's gonna just be like this passive level, the way certain people are talked about, that you're like, excuse me, excuse me, they're right there. You can't say that. That's mean. They count for something, okay? Um, I do really want to read some of the, because I think more people need to be exposed to the Lensman series, just to know that it's out there and that it is so fundamental and foundational to the growth of science fiction as a genre. I don't think a lot of things take too many notes. I know there's a lot of authors that like deride it pretty heavily, and there's good reasons for that. But I'm like, it's too much. I have too much fun reading it. Also, think of like the craziest, most overdone, ridiculous scaled space conflicts you can imagine. From, I don't know, Star Wars. From, I don't know, like Actually, Legend of the Galactic Heroes might be a good example. Various anime and whatnot. This puts them all to shame. This curbs them all. This throws them to the curb. It is completely insane what Lensman gets up to in terms of just scope of conflict. I think maybe some of the culture books get close, but a lot of those are very focus on a much more personal level. So I don't know that those really qualify. Um, anyway, I'm not going to say I'm not going to read stuff that's going to offend people. I'd like people not to be offended because it's just a work of fiction. You should really just relax. But, people are going to be people. Anyway, that's it for now. Wednesdays, once we get instantiation done, which will be this week, I've got a cute little treat planned. That one won't take long to get through. Then I've probably got, I'll probably wind up doing Termouche after that because that's really short, and I should be able to get through both of those, I think, in time. Yeah. Looking forward to when you get around to it in 2027. Oh, he knows. Thank you, person from the future. You've probably guessed the timeline at this point. That's like I read that. I'm like, that's no, that's spot on. That's probably about what it's gonna be. I I do kind of want to do a year where I'm not like booking myself out, haha, for like half a year at a whack. So maybe 2025 will be that year where I go back to doing something a little more lackadaisical in terms of I'm just going to pick stuff. And I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. I'm not going to commit to an entire series. But looking at my wall, so much of my wall is entire series. So you see the problem. Um, like, oh, sure, I'd love to do some Peter Hamilton, Peter F. Hamilton. I'd love to do like the reality dysfunction. The difficulty with the Night's Dawn trilogy is that there is a lot of really raunchy shit in there. It's kind of tough. It's like, and some of it's like really squicky, and it's like no, I don't like that. Um, I'm not going to give a plot breakdown for why, but we'll get there if we ever get into that. But mostly it's because those books are like, I don't know, like 800 pages a pop, and there's three of them. I think one of them is like 1,200 pages. It's wild. They're big. They're long. They're dummy thick trilogy. Also, I have a difficult time getting back into rereading Peter F. Hamilton because there's other authors that I like more now. Tastes change. Anyway, still, I would do those probably before I did like Pandora's Star. The what is that called? Is it the Commonwealth series? Probably before I did Pandora's Star, Judas Unchained, and whatever the other ones are. There's a bunch. There's a lot. He's a very prolific author. But this is years in the future that we don't have to worry about. I'm mostly just upset that like I basically have no more Peter Watts to read you people. Like I've got a short story collection and some that I can scrape from the internet that aren't in any like bound collections, and then I've got his novelization for the Crisis video game, the second one. I think it's for Crisis 2, called Crisis Legion. And those are both pretty short. So whatever. I've got plenty of Philip K. Dick. I know somebody was commenting on another video that they were thanking me for exposing them to Dick. Take that a different way than it came out. Exposing them to Philip K. Dick, and that they apparently did a bunch of binge reading and have been very happy with that. And I'm very glad that they're enjoying Philip K. Dick. I have to take Philip K. Dick in smallish doses because I can only feel so unsettled and paranoid. Because he's a master of it. He's so good He's so good at doing that. And I don't like everything he's done. And certainly the later you go chronologically in his life, the weirder things get because he had problems. He had issues. But anyway, tentative things that I want to do at some point. I definitely want to read through the Ambergris series by Jeff Vandermeer. That'll be a long undertaking because that's like a minimum of 4 books. I have it all in one bound volume, but we'll get there. I do want to do that because there's some real fun to be had there. Um, some of the installments are better than others, but they're very interesting reads. I can't wait till October when the 4th Area X book comes out. Pretty hyped for that. I won't be reading that immediately, probably because I'll be wrapped up in doing all the other stuff that I'm reading at the same time. Because we're not going to be done getting through the Destination Void and Three Body Problem trilogies. We're not going to be done. That's it. We're just not. So early next year, probably we'll get to reading that one aloud, which will have given me time to read it on my own time, as well as so I can vet it. It might be something I simply can't read on stream. I can't really imagine what that would entail. I've read Peter Watts on stream. I'm pretty sure I can read just about anything now. I mean, Jesus Christ, the Rifters trilogy has some truly horrible things. Some people doing really nasty, nasty things to each other, and it's just, without too much light at the end of the tunnel either. It's like, oh man, things are really just not going to get better, are they? No, no. Unlike, say, an Ian M. Banks book, I'm picking one at random off the top of my head that was particularly dire. What was that one called? Surface Detail. That one has some really nasty things happening to people, but there is kind of light at the end of the tunnel there. And you kind of feel that there's light at the end of the tunnel. That's also because you go into it knowing that Ian M. Banks is basically an optimistic person. I'm not sure if I have recommended this already, but I should. There was a art book. It's actually like a collection of his sketches and background work for the Culture series, and going through that is almost a religious experience because you see from all his own sketchings that he had this entire universe basically living in his head full time, and like down to the language. He has that, and that's like the language Moraine, I believe. Yeah, Moraine is not like it's not written anywhere in the books. You don't even hear much of it. You hear it as like the most you hear is like the occasional person's proper name, and like beyond that, you never see any of it printed in the books ever. But he had it written out. He knew what it looked like. He has a bunch of cool doodles of like fancy space guns. He has doodles of like suits. He has doodles of drones. He has doodles of ships. He has like half finished, like half in code notes to himself to remember things. It's very cool to read through. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I think it's The Art of the Culture. Um, shit. I got a copy. I should be able to find this. I know where my copy is. I can't get at it right now because it's in another room. Um, yeah, the Culture :space the drawings. It's a little pricey. That's actually not that bad. I think mine was considerably more expensive. I'm a little upset. I'm not complaining. It was worth it. Uh, if anybody out there has an interest in the Culture and has read any of the books, it's so worth it. It was so worth it. I can find an ISBN here. Where's the ISBN? Oh my God! Why, Amazon, are you so shit? There it is. Okay, so this is the ISBN 10, and I'll get the ISBN 13. Here we go. It's not especially long. It's like 160 pages or so. And let's format that. Okay, well, that got mangled. Just, yeah, let me redo that. Copy, paste, formatting hard. And here we go, ISBN 13. Come on. Oh, it's going to double post all of these. Sorry. Come on. There we go. It doesn't like me doing this. There we go. So you can check that out. I realize this is me shilling a product. They're not going to pay me for it. It's fine. I don't care. Uh, it is this cool. Like if you enjoy Ian M. Banks and you enjoy, particularly if you enjoy the Culture series, this is it's crazy to see how much of it he always had just rolling around in his skull all the time. And also how good the draft drawings are. They're like, he's got maps. He's got maps. Also of the universe, but also of like places in the books. And I'm like, oh shit, that's why it's described so clearly and cogently, because he knew exactly what he was describing. He was looking at it as he did it. He was like, yeah, so it's right over there. It's to the northeast. No big. By the balustrade. Duh. Crazy. Anyway, that'll do it. That'll do it for me. I got a dip. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. If you are listening to this after the fact and you didn't find me completely intolerable, oh, he's self-deprecating again. Oh no. You can listen to my backlog. It's all on the YouTube channel. I organize them by playlists and I update the playlists generally every single month, usually at the beginning or end of a month. If you want to catch me live, which is why everything is so rough around the edges and unprofessional, because I am doing it live and I am reading the book right in front of me. I'm holding it and it's got it in a little slip case. It's here. It's right here. I'm holding it. Flipping the pages. Except when it's only on a PDF or whatever. Set it aside. Setting that aside. I'm always reading them live. If you want to catch me live, you can catch me Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, unless there's a reason I can't do it. Generally every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at noon Eastern Time or UTC -5. So you can catch me live. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, stay safe, stay sane, and be decent to each other. Oh, there was another cover I think I didn't use. Ah, yes, here it is. One sec. I knew there was something I missed. Where are you? Nope, that's not it. That's not it. That's the same one you just picked. That's it. There we go. Yes, they are. It's like the guy has. I didn't know he had as much artistic talent as he did. And it's like, okay, yeah, he was probably using a draft board, and a line rule, and a bunch of other things. But it's like he still had like a clear vision in his head. I know Terry Pratchett. A recurring thing that pops up in the Discworld series is sometimes people will get ideas beamed into their heads, and they just have no choice but to be like, this is the idea that's being beamed into my head, and they're kind of like blessed/cursed in a way. And Ian M. Banks, like, this was a vibrant, living universe in his head, and that's partly kind of scary, partly kind of concerning, and mostly really cool. I wish I had that kind of imagination. Instead, I just live it vicariously by reading them and enjoying the hell out of them. It's a good time. Anyway, that's it from me. See you next time. See you this Wednesday, possibly. Yeah. See you all later. Bye. Thanks again. Toodles.